Muslims do not love other Muslims. They have no love for them. They have no love for the Palestinian peoples. None. If they had any, the Jordanians would have taken in the West Bank Palestinians. The Egyptians would have taken in the territory they used to run, the Gaza, and own the Gaza, and they would have taken in the Palestinians from the Gaza. Why have the Egyptians made sure that not one Palestinian is allowed to leave Gaza? Why do they make sure that their border wall is tough as anything? What do they mind? One thing: Jews living. Jews living and Jews winning. It hits them deep in their soul, in their psyche. It's an ancient, ancient hatred, perhaps the most ancient among the monotheisms. And
watch how this argument backfires. Why did Israel build such a big wall? Why did Israel build such a fortress that it's almost impenetrable? Of course, we see it get penetrated on October 7, which was a big security blunder. But why? I mean, if the Muslims don't love the Palestinians, then the Jews don't love the Palestinians either. But Douglas Murray is back at his divide and conquer. He knows, he talks about ancient history. His forefathers, the colonialists, they believed in divide and conquer. So he's doing his very best to now divide the Muslim hearts from the hearts of Palestinians. If the Muslims did not love the Palestinians, would we be protesting? Would we be shouting? The same man has a problem of Muslims protesting. Why didn't he bring that up? The whole globe, the Muslims are rocking. Why he didn't bring that up? Why he only spoke about the border? Why he didn't speak about the Muslims boiling worldwide in his own country, the UK? We are all boiling at what Israel is doing to the Muslims in Palestine. How dare he say we don't love them? And this is his trick. He wants Egypt to open the border. He wants Jordan to open the border. He wants this. And he's frustrated that it's not happening. You know why? Because the Muslims in Egypt, they're smart. The Muslims in Jordan are smart. They're saying, if we open the border, we have given in to the Israeli agenda to ethnically cleanse every single Palestinian Arab in Gaza and in the West Bank. But he plays reverse psychology as if we are children, as if we are dumb. Why? Look, it shows that they don't love. They're not opening the border. They're not opening the border. It means that they don't love. And those in government, Al-Sisi, it's the West, it's the Jews, it's the Yahud who actually put Sisi in Egypt. They kicked Mohammed Morsi out. Mohammed Morsi would have given a lot more aid. He would have done a lot more for the Arabs and the Palestinian people because he's from the Al-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. But they put Al-Sisi into Egypt, the leader. They got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? And they got rid of it and they put a puppet Israeli mouthpiece to run the constitution. And when he's not defending the Muslims in Palestine, then they say, look, there's a hate relationship between Muslims. Muslims don't really like each other. Look at the propaganda they're playing. They first set up anti-Muslim governments, and then when those supposed Muslim governments do not defend the Muslims, then they say, look, the Muslims don't love each other. But it's them who have put secular, liberal, anti-Muslim. Al-Sisi, he cannot claim he's a Muslim. They hate Sharia. They hate Islam. That's why they're in bed with Israel. And Douglas Murray, his ancestors, if you love the Jews, if you, as the West, if you love the Jews, why didn't you give a part of UK to the Jews? Why didn't you give Australians, you love the Jews, why didn't you give Alice Springs it's a desert anyway. The Jews would have come and made it a beautiful place, brought honey, milk, and made it a very progressed place. Why didn't you invite the Jews to Australia so they can have their own state in the Alice Springs? Why in America you didn't give Florida to the Jews? Why? Why did you plant them into the Middle East? Why did you bring them to the Middle East? In fact, Douglas Murray would say the Middle East is backwards, but he wants the Jews to live in the Middle East. He wants all the Jews to have their own state, independent state in the Middle East. Why? Why, when you are surrounded by bloodthirsty Arabs, why did you choose? Because you don't want them in Europe. You don't want them to have a state in Europe. So you're like, we couldn't deal with you. Now let the Muslims deal with you. These white colonialists like Douglas Murray, they didn't want the Jews in Europe. They kicked them out. They persecuted them. The Christians didn't want them in Cordoba in Spain. The Ottoman Empire had to come and save the Jews from Spain because they were being persecuted. They didn't want them in Germany. They were persecuted. They didn't want them. So what did they do? United Kingdom didn't gather all the Jews in Germany or Holland or wherever they went. They didn't gather them in England and say, we're going to give you a part of England. They said, we'll take you to the Middle East. We'll give you a part of Middle East. Why? Because it's part of the colonials project. The Crusaders got kicked out of the Holy Land. So now they're using the Jews. They're saying, we will give you a part of the Middle East. We will control the Middle East through you. And we will use our expansionism, our colonial expansion, to take all the natural resources. Israel is the greater America. Israel is the greater Australia and Britain and France. But they don't want to live there. The white person doesn't want to live in the Middle East. They're just using Israel as their military base to control the Middle East. But the white man doesn't want to live in the Middle East. They don't want to live amongst the Arabs. And in return, Israel is taking advantage of this because they're like, we're getting all the arms, we're getting all the support, we're getting everything that we have to do. We'll just build this great big wall and we'll just live here and we will pursue this dream of an Israeli state. But no, Douglas Murray would not invite the Jews. I mean, despite the Jews being the same mentality, the same ideology, the same, they look at the way of life the same, they don't want the Jews to inhabit them. No, they do not want that to take over Great Britain. They do not want to give them a piece of Great Britain, and they won't do that in America, and they won't do that in Australia. Although the Jews control a lot of the media and the government in Australia, UK, in America, by far they will not give them a state amongst their own countries. And this colonialist mentality of Douglas Murray is not going to win. You haven't won in history. And you will not win in the future because Allah has promised victory for the Muslims. You plot and plan, but Allah is the best of planners. You divided the Muslim nations. You set up borders. You gave us different flags and different names. In fact, they did that in Asia. They took over Philippines and they took over that Indonesian area. They named it Philippines after a guy called Philip. They conquered and invaded most of the world. And he has a problem with immigration to the UK. I say karma is a bitch, my friend. Karma is a bitch. Now that you invaded most of the nations, the Muslims are invading you, and you can't deal with it. You can't deal with the growth of Islam. You can't deal with the fact that peer research says by 2050, Islam will be the dominant religion.